that was sort of okay then, but our society has shifted so much, and I did begin to realise actually maybe I could just live the vision that I'd had as a little girl, which was to be myself, my own creative self. I remember one Easter Sunday on a holiday, such a dress was produced, and I think I was about 6. I threw a tantrum and I said no, I wanted to wear my pink trousers because I was, as a concession, wearing trousers. I could wear them if they were pink. And there was a terrible row, and my father got my pink trousers and he ripped them apart at the crotch, and he said, "That's the end of that."
Oh, no.
So I know I'm laughing. It is tragic, but I mean, it really wasn't easy with a conventional family to sort of play the non-binary. Crucial moment, maybe it was about 3 years into the analysis, I said I really want to be a composer, but I don't think I can do it because women can't really do it, can they?
Mm.
And at the next session, he gave me a CD from The Profound Abyss, which is a choral work by Lily Boulanger. And I took it home and listened to it, and I thought it was absolutely stunning. I thought this is as good as Sibelius or Mahler or Bruckner, it's right up there.
Mm.
And that was such a delicious response from him.
Hello everyone, and welcome to How to Have Extraordinary Relationships podcast with me, Lucy Cavendish. Today I am very excited to be with the composer, conductor, opera singer, teacher, Dr. Susannah Self, who, as you can see, is sitting in her music studio. She lives in Norfolk with her husband of many, many years, which I'm sure we'll talk about, Michael. And she's going to talk to us about her life composing, what it's like in a man's world. It's a world I don't know that much about, so I'm really interested in it. So, hi, I'm going to call you Susie. She said I could. So, hi, Susie, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, it's lovely to be here. Yeah.
So, tell us a bit about you and your music, because I know you've done so many. I mean, you sent me your CV, the official CV, which you've done so much that and you're composing now. You've got operas coming up. You travel the world. It looks incredibly glamorous. But tell us about your world and what it's like being in your world.
Well, I think a lot of people who come into music come through a channel of naivety and vision. So that started when I was 3 years old, and my grandmother gave me a coloured glockenspiel, and I just loved composing from that moment on. And I'm now really living my dream, finally, as a full-time composer. But it was a sort of bumpy ride. I ended up going to the Royal College of Music as a composer and singer. Mm. And I don't know what happened. I think it was actually the year after I got married. I got a scholarship to study in the Rocky Mountains in Canada at a centre called the Banff Centre. And my voice suddenly grew. And I was advised by the Royal College of Music to become an opera singer.
Right.
I really wanted to become a composer, but it was sort of intimated to me fairly clearly that I'd be much better off as an opera singer because women really struggled in those days to become composers, to get recognition. And so I took that advice, and I don't have any regrets, but I think come around my sort of early 50s, I had a little pension from the Royal Opera House, and I thought, I'm going to jump ship and do what I really always wanted to do, which is compose. And a bit like that sort of addict about, when you're preparing to make a big shift in your life, you need to sort of be preparing. And I had been for the 30 years I'd been singing as an opera singer. I'd been actually assiduously composing in my spare time because all that glamour of being abroad, there is an awful lot of hanging around. And most singers fall into two options. One is to eat themselves, so that's why they become very big, or have lots of affairs. And I certainly tried the second one a couple of times.
Okay, well, that's very honest of you.
Yeah, oh yes, I certainly did. But it, of course, left me feeling like a wreck, really. And that's when I decided I would start composing. Symphonies are actually a little bit, I know it sounds a bit ostentatious, but a bit like Mahler did when he was conducting the Vienna Staatsoper. So it's a fantastic career. I think really though now, because I'm in the driving seat of my career as a composer, and I took up conducting lessons and became a conductor. I really enjoy being a leader. Being an opera singer, even if it seems quite glamorous, is a little bit like being a foot soldier. You know, you have to do what you're told.
Okay. So if you come in and you do and you're seeing Madame Butterfly and you decide to change it, the director, is it a director of the opera will saying, "Don't stop it, she doesn't do that. She doesn't do
Yeah.
it." No.
I mean, it's unfortunate because there are a lot of very powerful women who become opera singers. I mean, obviously, it is an amazing thing to have this very powerful voice, and with it, inevitably comes quite powerful ideas, creative ideas, which cannot allow fruition really under the regime of a director, an opera director, and a conductor, and of course the opera house. So you really just have to buckle down.
Can I just ask a technical question, right? So when you're an opera singer, are you a freelance? Do people kind of go, get her here? Or are you attached like ballerinas to the Royal Opera? I mean, how does it actually work? And did you know you were always going to get work, or you're like a freelancer? Is it worrying? I mean, how does it? I'm just interested in the world of an opera singer because I don't, know much about that.
Well, it's all those things. It depends what you choose to do. There are very few regular posts for solo opera singers in England. It hardly exists at all. If you opt to sing in the chorus, say, of the Royal Opera House or Glyndebourne, you can then get an income with a pension and all those benefits. But of course, you're very much stuck in that. You can't suddenly shine from the chorus and take over from Pavarotti.
Right.
So it's a very different pathway. In Europe, there is quite a lot more wriggle room for people to have full-time contracts year in, year out. But if you really want to get somewhere in your career, what you do is you get an agent and then you're freelance. So right. You're like a cork on the sea, hoping for lots of work, going to lots of auditions. And well, there it is. It's very much up and down roller coaster.
So I'm getting the sense that you're not a person that likes to be told what to do by other people when you especially because you have your own creativity.
Yeah, I think that would be fair to say. I think I was able to suck it up for a long time. There was a time when I started my career when I wore Laura Ashley dresses and I, flaunted my femininity in a way, and that was sort of okay then. But our society has shifted so much. And I did begin to realize, actually, maybe I could just live the vision that I'd had as a little girl, which was to be myself, my own creative self.
I love it. So tell me about you as a little girl, this little 3-year-old. She's got her glockenspiel from Granny.
Well, this little 3-year-old was quite a sort of wild personality, very adventurous. I love playing football. I love fishing, climbing trees. I was definitely labelled a tomboy, but worse still for my poor mother, who very much identified as a very feminine person. I actually really wanted to be a boy. And would dress like a boy, and there would be rows. So yes,
he would say, "Why don't you wear this beautiful, pretty dress to go to church or something?" And you'll be like, "Bleh."
You've nailed it exactly. I remember one Easter Sunday on a holiday, such a dress was produced, and I think I was about 6. I threw a tantrum, and I said no. I wanted to wear my pink trousers because I was, as a concession, wearing trousers. I could wear them if they were pink. And there was a terrible row, and my father got my pink trousers and he ripped them apart at the crotch, and he said, "That's the end of that."
Oh no.
So I know I'm laughing. It is tragic, but I mean, it really wasn't easy with a conventional family to sort of play the non-binary position.
Yes.
I did have one refuge, which was my cousin Will Self's mother, Elaine Self, who came from America, and she called me Jack. And
Did she?
yes, and she allowed me to wear Will's shorts, which I thought was fantastic because, of course, the zip went up the other way.
I never thought about that. That's interesting. Yes. So, I mean, Will's your cousin, and I know you've worked with him. We'll get on to that. So you would go and hang out with what essentially your auntie.
Yes, I used to go and stay with my auntie and uncle Peter in the Hampstead Garden suburb in Brim Hill. And I spent a lot of time there. And Elaine was amazing. She cooked southern fried chicken. I don't know if you've ever had that.
I have. It's amazing.
Millions of calories, of course. It's covered in breadcrumbs and fried in butter. And of course, homemade brownies. And, I really felt I could be myself then. So that I suppose gave me a little kernel of a memory later on. Now, come on, you can be this person. You don't have to go on being this what I used to call a floozy.
A floozy.
A floozy.
What's a floozy?
Well, a floozy is somebody who goes around. I mean, I'm not critical of them, but for me, it felt somebody who went around in very feminine clothes, wafting, making herself sexually very attractive to everybody, and doing what everybody says, like a good girl.
That's how you got on. That's how people had to be. Women had to be, you think?
Yes, I think so. I can't imagine really the freedoms I have now. It would have been 40 years ago, it would have been a lot harder to have been like I am now.
So you were told, listen, you can't be a composer. Women, there just isn't any space for women composers. It's not in our.
Well, I mean, in fairness, there have been women composers all throughout all the generations, and there have been, in the last century, quite a few amazing ones. I mean, Lily Boulanger comes to mind, a French composer. She died very young, but she composed brilliant music. But there was this perception that somehow women wouldn't be able to compose as well as men. And it's extraordinary, isn't it? Because when we think of novel writing, you think of George Eliot, or there's not a scintilla of a sort of suspicion that a woman couldn't write as well as a man, that somehow this erudite activity called composing was only afforded to a male brain. Crazy, really.
Crazy. And I mean, and obviously it's what you were really young and you really wanted to do that. It was your dream, wasn't it?
It was my dream.
Did you hear the music in you? It's in you, is it? Yeah.
Well, the way it works, it's actually quite non-egocentric, because I really think that what a composer is doing is sort of working as a channel for musical ideas, that they're sort of there in the universe, if you like, and you relax and allow them to flow through you and out of you, and that's when it connects with other people. So it's not really about you at all.
I think that's amazing. So what, you might be at home on the beach in Greece, and you will hear the music. The music will come to you. Is that right? Have I got that right?
It just falls into my lap with very little effort. And then obviously I have to write it down. I mean, I spend a lot of time improvising at my piano, and then I write it down. You know, I have to, because if you've got an orchestra playing your music, obviously you're making, in a sense, a map for everybody to play from so they can play together. So that requires quite a lot more sort of intellectual erudition, I'd say.
Yes.
But it's a little bit like a three-dimensional game of chess.
In what way?
Well, you're sort of kind of weaving and working the material of all the instruments to fit together in terms of rhythm and harmony and feeling. And so it's incredibly exciting, because it's like working with so many different balls up in the air simultaneously, and how might they fall together to form something that's really delicious to listen to.
And also vocals. I mean, you've written a Stabat Mater that I very much enjoy, but I listened to it thinking, God, how on earth does she do that?
Well, yeah, but
I'm like, how does she know that was like an oboe? I mean, why didn't she make it a clarinet? I mean, maybe I'm overthinking.
No, not at all. Well, there are certain parameters you set yourself. So one thing, for example, when I was composing the Stabat Mater, I decided that it would be very popular with other choirs if I wrote it to the same orchestration as a famous piece, choral piece. So I chose, in that instance, Dürfler's Requiem. So that had no, actually, it wasn't Dürfler's Requiem. I'm sorry, it was actually Vivaldi Gloria, and that had a specific instrumentation, oboe being one of the instruments.
Ah, that's why.
So in a way, it's a bit like a painter. You set up your palette or your characters in a novel, and so you've got a certain amount of structure already to work to. And then I can't entirely say how I do it. I love to quote to my students what Degas said, the painter. He said, "I only do good work when I have no idea what I'm doing."
So you're this little feisty girl, and you have another famous cousin, Nigel Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that when you were young, you'd look at Will Self and Nigel Kennedy, think, I want to be like you. I want to get to do what you're doing.
Yeah. I'm not specifically what they were doing, but I wanted to be free, like them, to really express myself and to be really, I suppose, taken seriously as a creative force.
And that didn't feel, and you felt, because they were male, they were, allowed, in inverted commas, to
yes,
do this, and you weren't.
I think for a long time it's nothing personal to them, but for a long time then I did begin to develop a bit of a chip on my shoulder, feeling it was just really difficult to achieve that level of just ground respect that they had, just because they happened to be born with male genitals. Seemed to be as simple as that, and it seemed quite ridiculous. And so I sort of entered a journey of self-development to somehow lift myself out of that point of view.
So what was that journey? I mean, just if you're okay to speak about that.
Well, I think the journey, it started about 27 years ago when my father died, which was, for anybody, my father was very supportive of all aspects of my musical career. Really great. So I thought this was a moment when I might go down the tubes, frankly. to not have his support. So I went in and did an analysis with a wonderful Jungian analyst, and I was his last analysand actually. And he'd come over from Frankfurt on the Kinder transport.
Wow.
He was British. And he was just the perfect match for me. He was actually also a psychiatrist. So I think I might have got a bit of sort of extra thrown in. And I saw him for 10 years, two times a week. And his passion was the mind and what motivates us, but also music. So we were a perfect match. And I remember a crucial moment, maybe it was about 3 years into the analysis, I said, I really want to be a composer, but I don't think I can do it because women can't really do it, can they? And he at the next session, he gave me a CD of this From the Profound Abyss, which is a choral work by Lily Boulanger, who I mentioned earlier, French composer. And I took it home and listened to it, and I thought it was absolutely stunning. I thought this is as good as Sibelius or Mahler or Bruckner. You know, it's right up there. And that was such a delicious response from him.
Yes, it was. That's an amazing response.
Yeah. And so then I started to compose symphonies, and I dedicated my second symphony to him.
That's lovely. Amazing. So, you know, you also obviously met your husband. You were 18, he was 20. You met at the Royal College.
Yeah, I can remember that because I was just getting over anorexia, and we met at the Christmas party, and so I was very, very skinny still. And he said, "Would you like to sit on my lap?" And I said, "Oh my goodness, I don't know. I'm sure I'm much too heavy for you." Which maybe I was too heavy psychologically, I don't know. But I did sit on his lap, and I mean, we fell instantly in love. He has been absolutely my rock and a perfect match because he's very unconventional. He's Canadian, which of course his mother was an architect. His sister is an architect, so he's used to being with women who do things. And I mean, also he was an artist, so he's a very fine composer and cellist, and so he understood all the elements of the struggles and the self-doubt that inevitably comes as you try to forge a path for yourself. And he's just absolutely supported me 100% through everything.
And what's been, I mean, obviously you said it's been a tempestuous relationship as your two creatives, that I'm sure isn't surprising. What's kept you together?
Yeah, I think sometimes we do wonder. I don't know. I mean, I think there is some sort of very practical reasons. There's quite a lot of studies which show that people who come from similar backgrounds maybe have a better chance of keeping going. So we both come from professional backgrounds. My father was a barrister, my mother was a wine writer, and then Will and Nigel, a sort of what I call wishy-washy, artsy-fartsy kind of North London background. And you know, his mother being an architect. So that sort of artistic valuing the arts as true vocation rather than something, you know, that should be resisted because you're never going to earn enough money. And you should get a proper job. You know, being in the arts was to both our families a proper job. Now, the fact is, I mean, it took a hell of an effort to earn enough money to keep going, but that's another story. But you know, I think that helped, but we are both very highly strung. So I don't know about relationships, but I often feel that the making of a relationship is actually being able to have a really awful row and still be able to continue
Yes.
being friends.
Yes.
You know, when everything is thrown out there, and it is quite frequently thrown out there in quite a sort of theatrical stream from both of us.
Yeah, but you're still okay.
Well, you know,
Still
we
friends.
wake up the next day, we're back to normal. It's almost like a sort of thunderstorm, you know. So clear as the air, I suppose.
So tell us about, yeah, I mean, how do you make, I mean, how do you make money out of being a composer? How does it actually, because we get, I imagine, people sitting in their music studio composing symphonies, but someone's got to buy them and listen to them and pay for them. How does all that work?
Yeah. Well, there are in the world a very few composers who are very famous. I mean, they still exist today, and they'll get a commission. For example, there's Sir George Benjamin. He's composed a couple of operas for the Royal Opera House. And that kind of commission is about 250,000. So, yeah. So, good money. So he doesn't need to do anything else. Yeah. But that really is the top of the pile. I mean, that's the sort of Elton John of classical composing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to happen to most of us.
Yeah.
So, yes, I do get commissions, but they're titchy. They're not enough to live on. So what I noticed, particularly in some of the more commercially successful classical musicians like Philip Glass and John Adams, they're both from America, that they actually conducted their own music and they ran their own companies. So they made their own opportunities. So as I started to develop my career as a composer, I immediately went and had conducting tuition from two very fine conductors. One's called David Parry. He's conducted at ENO and all over the world. And the other, Barry Wordsworth, who was the musical director of the Royal Ballet. And they both gave me their skills actually free. They never charged me a penny.
Wow.
But they were both a little skeptical, I have to say. One of them said, I won't say who, one of them said, you really conduct well, but I still think you're going to struggle to get the respect of the orchestra because
you're a woman.
Yeah. So that was a little bit daunting. Yeah. When I went into my first rehearsal, I thought, oh my God, and how am I going to manage myself? And this is where actually watching Barry Wordsworth work with the Royal Opera House Orchestra really had an impact on me, because that orchestra is some of the best players in the world, but they're there for life and they can be quite cynical. So when a conductor comes in, if they don't like that conductor or they don't feel motivated, they won't play well.
Because they've been playing these instruments for decades, haven't they?
Yeah, and they've got a sort of communal attitude. So you've got to find a way in to make them feel this would be really fantastic. Now, kind of the old model would be Herbert von Karajan, the dominator. But that doesn't really work anymore. And the reason it doesn't is because a lot of people in the orchestra think, hang on a moment, I could probably conduct as well as he could. And so when Barry Wordsworth was conducting that orchestra, he would say things like, that was really well played. Do you need anything else apart from a better conductor? So he would
That's a risky tactic.
It is a risky tactic, but it works. It works because musicians have a great sense of humour. And this, I mean, it does sound rather sort of old school, but this slightly sort of self-deprecating way of dealing with it really sort of diffuses that whole thing. of the conductor being sort of on some kind of pedestal. Instead, I'm there very much with the musicians. And so, another trick is to walk away from the orchestra while they're playing and not conduct,
Okay, tell me why that works.
because you're just waving your hands about. If they're good musicians, they can play together without a conductor.
Well, then why does anyone need? I mean, I watch it and I think, why does anyone need a conductor? 'Cause I just see people doing this, 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, well, I could do that.
You probably could,
But
yes.
obviously, that's not what you're doing as a conductor. You're not just counting and
No,
doing this and doing that. You're doing more than that, aren't you?
I think what you're really doing is being a poet and saying, this music is just so fantastic. You're going to want to play this really well. So in a sense, you're channeling that vision that the composer originally had. This is really something special. This is going to really move people. So it's a little bit being like a life coach, or being the manager of a football team. You're the inspiration.
Yes, the manager of the football team isn't necessarily a good footballer, or hasn't even necessarily played football.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of the best conductors started out as rank and file players. For example, Bernard Haitink started out as a rank and file horn player. I mean, he wasn't a particularly brilliant horn player, but he became an amazing conductor.
When you go in to meet your orchestra the first time, do you name the fact you're a woman? Do you say anything about that, or do you not feel you? I mean, I'm not saying you should, I'm just interested.
No, I don't. I mean that I don't, because I've really moved on now from this narrative that I'm a woman, or isn't this amazing? A woman's conducting an orchestra. Get over it, for goodness sake. It's not amazing a woman's conducting. A woman's just a human being with a vagina rather than a penis. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
So I don't buy into that narrative. I don't feel I have to justify myself. And I think the more I work on myself, to accept that different point of view, then it doesn't become an issue anymore.
Yes. Have you had people kick up? I'm not asking you to name names, but have you felt that some people in orchestras or around or any has looked down on you or been
Not players, actually. I mean, I think players are, just mostly absolutely fantastic people. They're lovely to work with. I went to a conducting competition while I was at Cambridge, because I went back into university as a mature student, and that was only 10 years ago. I was the only female competitor in 20 conductors. The man I sat next to in the oral test, we had to do a very complicated oral test where you have to listen to music being played and then write it down in manuscripts. Really difficult, and I'm not very good at it, frankly, but I passed the test.
Yay.
Yeah, but this guy said, I said, oh, well, what have you conducted? He said, I've never conducted before. I'm just giving this a go. Yeah, and that's very much that the men often will give it a go. And I was the only person in the competition, although I knew there were 10 other women in the university who conducted. And I asked them, why didn't you enter? And they said, we didn't enter because we didn't think we'd win, and it would be too painful not to win.
So you're forging a bit of a path, actually, aren't you? I do think
Yeah.
you are.
I mean, I didn't win.
Well,
But I just sucked it
you
up.
competed, right? You competed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're not going to win if you don't compete, if you don't give it a go. And I always say that to my students, particularly my women students, who often present that same thing. Oh, I don't think I'm going to go in for that because I might not. Doesn't matter. Failure, bring it on. It's exciting failure. It actually galvanizes you to do more. You don't have to feel a mess. But in that competition, there were some comments given to me by one of the adjudicators afterwards, who said two things which were really reprehensible. Firstly, he said, "You conduct quite well for her," and then he stopped himself. And then he said, "I don't like it that you're so tall." Now,
oh my goodness! What? Did you tell? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll chop my I'll chop
my legs.
I mean, what the hell?
Well, of course, I mean, because I didn't know whether I was going to get through to the next round, I didn't challenge him. But I've subsequently have learned to challenge people. For example, I met a very famous publisher from Faber and Faber a few years ago at a conference, and she said, "Oh my goodness, you're a woman composer." She said, "They're so lightweight." And I said, "Well, that's really interesting." I said, "Why don't we have lunch together and have a chat about this? Because I think that your publishing house is going to really suffer if you don't embrace all the brilliant women composers who are coming up." And we did go out to lunch. I'm not sure I entirely convinced her, but at least I found, again, a sort of more humorous sort of approach.
Well, yes, what you did was come and get to know me and get to know what I do. And let me give you an experience of me as a conductor, which I think was very generous of you, actually.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I have a friend. She's a jazz musician, and she's doing a PhD on why aren't there more women in jazz, in jazz bands, and well, it's quite difficult for women to sort of muscle in, and quite a lot of the women, these are young women she's done research on, said they were just exhausted with trying to muscle in. So that there is a little bit of that going on. I mean, I think things have changed. The one thing I would say is that, of course, now I'm a mature woman composer and conductor, and therein lies another challenge, because you will see young women conductors, you will see young women composers, but you still don't see very many women of my generation. So there's still a sort of, there's another level of prejudice, but I'm working on that in myself too. I really think if I don't take it on board, then it won't manifest.
I think that's right, because you said that you still feel like you're a composer and conductor working in a man's world.
Yes. Well, that's because most composers and conductors still are men. I mean, actually, if you look at the statistics of composers in the British Isles, 20% are women. Yeah. So who knows what that's about? Some people might associate composing with being a little bit brainy, or even a little bit neurodivergent, or autistic. There could be an element of that. Funnily enough, my grandfather was a savant. So he was so clever, he could actually memorize a whole phone book. So there may be some, of course, we don't need to do that anymore. But I mean,
your grandfather memorized a phone book.
Yes, he could. He was amazing, and he went to America in the Second World War and ran the whole operation for the aircraft, coordinated all the attacks, the Battle of Britain, and everything.
Oh my God,
that's memory.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So I might have got a little bit of that genetic component, perhaps, which has made my brain a little bit more. But it's quite interesting. It's still quite marked, even though there's much more opportunity for women composers. Still, far more men are attracted to the activity than women.
I mean, financially, it's hard, isn't it? It's not a career that has, pound signs dinging all over. Not that I'm saying it has to be about money, but you do have to live.
Yeah, so I mean, you asked some while ago how I lived. So look at the great composers, Mozart, Bruckner, Bach. They all taught. That's how we do it. You teach. Yeah, and although some people might say, oh, well, that's a failure teaching. I would not say it's a failure. I would say it's an empowerer of yourself and your students. It's actually incredibly stimulating. And it's a sort of, I suppose, music, like a lot of things in life, is a kind of relay race. You know, it's not just about you, it's about passing on that activity. The reason that Mozart became such a brilliant composer is because there were millions of Mozarts living at that time. It wasn't just him.
Well, so, but how did he become the famous one then? I mean, you're right. I'm sure there was lots of Mozarts.
Well, because it's like if there's a sort of group, lots of amazing writers or painters, then a few will rise to the top and be even more amazing. So the sort of environment of more artistic activity amongst a greater body of people will bring forwards more greatness than isolation.
Yes. Yes.
I think anyway. Certainly,
Yeah.
history of music shows that.
So right now, the music kind of comes through you, as it comes to you, it comes through you. Obviously, when you make, I don't know how to phrase this in a way that's correct. Some music is obviously religious, Stabat Mater, you know, there's a religious component to it. Other things aren't. Is that important to you, or is it that's not part of it?
That's a really interesting question because I've always felt a very strong sense of an interest in spirituality ever since I was a little girl. I actually remember talking to God, or I thought I was talking to God in the garden, a bit like Joan of Arc when I was about 6. And I mean, of course, I don't know really what to think, but I have always been very interested in spirituality. But I have struggled to align myself, particularly to a particular religion, because I suppose if I was identifying with any kind of spirituality, it would be a more mystical approach. And and that sort of ties in with the music because the music is sort of like a universal energy that's flowing. And so it was quite interesting after the pandemic that I happened to relocate my bolt hole from North London to Ely, which is near Cambridge. We bought a little cottage underneath the cathedral, and almost immediately, although I didn't go to many services, I just suddenly felt drawn to this much more sort of holy, ecclesiastical music. And I started to set these very basic texts that so many composers have set. So, for example, the Requiem, you know, there's the Verdi Requiem, and there's every composer, the Mozart Requiem. You know,
I love requiems.
yeah. So I composed a sea requiem because I live most of the time near the North Sea, and I just love the sea. So I infused in that requiem poetry by Emily Dickinson, Walt Whitman, and Keats. And that felt really special. By the time I got to the Stabat Mater, which is the work you listened to, that was really interesting because I suppose maybe I saw it almost like an opera, a story. The Stabat Mater explores every sort of aspect of the Virgin Mary's reaction to standing at the foot of the cross when Jesus is being crucified. And it's a medieval poem from the 13th century, and it seemed to speak to me about suffering, but the suffering of a mother, or the suffering that we all have to go through, even if we're not aligned to the Christian religion. And so that's how I sort of kind of became inspired by that poetry, even though it was her story. It also seemed to have a more universal quality to it.
Yes. And your work, you've got 2 commissions, is that right? I wrote to 2 operas you've got.
Well, they're sort of they're not quite commissions yet, and that's that they're in the rub. So there's an awful lot of sort of dating kind of activity, I would say.
I love that. Well, you're kind of eyeing each other up a bit about,
Yeah, yeah, you're eyeing you know I'm going back to Festival O in Rotterdam this weekend.
Mm.
So at the moment I'm developing an opera with them called Giantess.
Yes, I've seen the, please people look at it. It's available, I think, probably the clips
Yes,
on
yeah,
YouTube. Would that be right? We'll
right,
do that
right.
again. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I feel really inspired by the what I've seen, what I've heard.
Well, it just seems to tickle everybody, in the right way. And yeah, I will be speed dating with the artistic director on Friday. Where we're going out to watch the Rotterdam Philharmonic, and it's all about building those relationships with him, but also with the festival and building a piece that might work for the festival and might relate to people in Rotterdam. So I think, in a way, it's no good anymore to be an artist in an ivory tower saying, I'm a great artist and here's my opera, do it. Instead, I'm really forging into the community. So at the moment, I'm developing Giantess in Rotterdam with a community choir, and I'm developing it in Norwich with neurodivergent teenagers in a series of workshops.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible. So you've written it all, or you've written
No,
bits?
I have. Well, I've written some ideas, but
Yes.
then a lot of it will be taken forward or transformed by their ideas. So in a sense, I'm being creative, but I'm also curating their ideas. And I mean, it's not just a generous act. It's a selfish act because it will be a better piece because it will be connecting with what they're interested in. For example, I've already done some pilot workshops with young people, and everybody's absolutely obsessed. What kind of hairstyle does each giantess have? Because there are 8 giantesses. And that had never occurred to me.
So I think this is so important because it's, I mean, this is very basic. I want to listen to music I like to listen to. I want to hear something that I like. I don't want to have to just, I want the idea of this all connecting together as it grows and moves, a bit like, that feels like creatively a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that has been another aspect of my artistic struggle, which is not to do with my gender, but to do with the aesthetic of what modern opera or modern classical music should be. So, like when I got to Cambridge 10 years ago, I mean, I had a wonderful time there, and I rode for my college. I couldn't have had a more lovely time. But this style of music you have to compose at the music faculty there is very strict. It must have no tune, must have no harmony or discernible rhythm. So it's got to be very disjointed kind of music. And because I like a challenge. It was only a year, and I thought, hey,
Give it a go, yeah.
Yeah, it was actually. I knew that style of music. I'd sung in lots of operas with that style of music. But then I was very fortunate to go on to Birmingham Conservatoire to do my PhD in composing opera. And there they said, you're crazy, compose like your voice, not this Cambridge voice. So I threw that away and then started to work, particularly with young people in Birmingham at the Birmingham Ormiston Academy. That's a performance academy. And I started to write pop songs for them to sing in the opera rather than operatic songs. And I thought, why not?
Yes. Yes, why not? Brilliant.
Yeah.
I bet that went down well.
It did. I mean, that was a fantastic success. It was called Quilt Song, and the main character in that was Rosa Parks, because I wanted to have a female character who would pass the Bechtel test.
What's that test?
Well, the Bechtel test is from this magazine for lesbians. And the Bechtel test is you must have 2 women in an opera who have a conversation about something else than falling in love.
Oh, yeah, good.
Yeah.
Excellent. I like this.
So on many different levels, I've sort of kind of been developing my practice as a composer.
I think you are really powerful right now. Do you feel that? I really, I just get from you this feeling that you are really in a very empowered place.
Yeah, I think mostly I'm in a really good place. I mean, I think I sometimes do, crawl up into bed with some Netflix and just think, it's all quite overwhelming because it's a very powerful business. But I think having been a performer, having sung all those roles on the opera stage, you have to be very brave to run on into an opera house, onto the stage with the orchestra playing, come in at the right time, know your voice is going to work. And so in a way, I can dare myself to give it a go, and that's really something that I feel I can share with other composers and conductors too. Just give it a go.
So what would you now say to that little 3-year-old with her glockenspiel? Obviously, difficult things happened. You mentioned your anorexia. I mean, obviously, things weren't, it wasn't just sort of happily dappily cottage land.
No, it wasn't. It was a very difficult childhood. I think largely because my mother had a terrible depression 4 days after I was born. So that had a huge impact on her and, of course, myself, because she was taken to a mental hospital. People weren't kept together then. And so, yeah, it was a struggle. And I can see the anorexia growing from all those troubles. Yeah, I think, now it could be different, but I still think that women have some way to go internally. It's not just about the external circumstances of whether they can get an opportunity, whether they can really believe in themselves.
So you're not the 10 women that don't enter the competition. But is that what you mean by the internal bias that we have?
Yes, exactly. The internal, that's beautifully put. The internal bias. It's so easy to police ourselves and say, oh, I wouldn't give that a go.
Yeah. And you're going to be, you conduct a lot, you have lots of pieces for people to come and listen to. So where can people find more about you?
Well, they can find a lot about me on my publishers' websites. So I have 2 publishers, Composers Edition in the UK and Universal Edition in Vienna.
Wow. And you have you're active on Substack?
I'm active on Substack and on Facebook. So you probably, if you want to find out about where my next performances are, on Facebook, I'm Susie Self.
If you want to listen to you, there's lots of stuff on YouTube, isn't there?
Lots of stuff. That's Dr. Susannah Self on YouTube. Yeah. You can explore, or Dr. Susannah Self on SoundCloud. If you don't want the ads, you can just listen. It's quite nice to listen on SoundCloud and, cook a meal or do something else.
Yeah. So, there's so much we could talk about. But thank you so much for being so generous and open and inspiring.
That's my pleasure.
It's just brilliant. Please, everyone, go and listen to your compositions. There's something else, and we're looking forward to hopefully a couple of operas that will come into fruition.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.